Kwabena, which means welcome. And I learned that in Ghana, where I visited just not long ago. I discovered through a relative that we were descended from Ghanaians, and I was very happy to hear that because we're already married to Ghanaians. So I'm just very happy to invite you to watch the show for a new person who has just come from her homeland, and another person who you've seen very often here on the show, Baba Prince, Dr. John F. Price.
Hello, Guru Maji, how are you?
I'm glad to have you here, and I'm fine. I want to tell the audience before we begin that I now have, or OmniU now has, a website. It's OmniU-H3O.com, OmniU-H3O.com. So I want you to visit us on the website, and at the end of the show, if I can recall that, I should do this, I will repeat that information so you'll have it. But Baba Prince and I always have a show. We have our shows called Candid Conversation because what we do is decide that we want to talk about things, and we want to talk about them to the fullest extent that we can, just from the point of view of our own perspective. We don't claim to know all of the answers or even know what we're talking about, but we do think that we can talk about some things. The things that I want to talk about have to do with the current state of affairs in this country. Having been out of the country and seeing how the rest of the world lives, or at least a part of the rest of the world, I realize that black people in America are very spoiled. We're very privileged here because we have a lot of creature comforts that others of our kind do not have in other places. But that results in our being more dependent as a people rather than more independent, because when I was visiting Ghana, I noted that the people there were very resourceful, and they were capable of taking care of themselves, and I'm concerned that that might not be the same thing for ourselves. So looking at the prospects, looking at what is going on in terms of just the housing market, the fact that there are so many people who will be facing the loss of home, that there are so many people who will be facing the loss of employment, that these kinds of things will impact entire families, and in turn it's a domino effect. And so I tend to get very concerned because I feel in this situation somewhat impotent to do anything that would be of any benefit or any real benefit. And I remember a conversation that we had earlier when we talked about homelessness, and one of your observation was that this is not our home. So I'd like to revisit that, because we get so caught up with materiality, with things, with this world, which is obviously important, but it is not the be-all and the end-all of our existence. So I'd like to begin with looking at this whole thing about homelessness, because I think it will lead us into some good conversation here.
Well, Guru Maji, I think we had that conversation when we were talking about the homeless, and to a greater or less extent, this is not our home. I'm speaking in a sense of a spiritual sense. This is not our home. This earth is not our home. We're only here for a few years, and then it's all of it. We have to move on. There are two things that one could be certain of in this life. Firstly, you should have a life full of problems. And the second one is you shall truly die. You should pass on from this. These are only the two certainties that we can be certain of in this life. Everything else is quite uncertain. And as far as homelessness is concerned, you had an opportunity to be in Ghana, and you saw how resourceful the people were, and the lack of resources that they did have to work with. And I guess that would give us an idea of how the rest of the world lives. We in this country, whatever ethnic group we belong to, we are very fortunate in a great many senses. Of course, there are problems. There's inequities in this country, but there's inequities everywhere in the world, you see. And what happens is that we are born into this condition. And being born into this condition, we seem to compare it with those conditions in our immediate environment. For instance, if a man's got $1 million and he sees a man with $10 million, he feels poor, you see? And vice versa. A man with $10 million, he sees a man with $1 billion, he says, I have no money. He feels poor. Such is the condition that we live in, you see. We may not have $1 million. We may not have $100,000. But the monies that are made available to us through our work, if we're able to get a job, if we're able to do work, and able to achieve some kind of income, comparatively throughout the world, you know, that's quite a bit. And then there are catch basins that we do have, like they have welfare systems, they got social security systems, they got all of these systems, you know, in this country that to catch you, just in case you stumble. But in other parts of the world, they don't have these systems. You're dependent upon your son, your daughter, your relatives, and your friends.
And yourself.
And absolutely yourself. Absolutely yourself. And if these systems give way, that's all you got.
Well, this is what we're facing now. The systems about which you speak are all on the auction block. This country is becoming privatized, which means that more and more of the services that used to be available to the so-called citizens by virtue of their taxes are now being sold to private interests. And so if you want to have these services, you will have to find a way to pay for them. Social Security, I'm told, is bankrupt. It may or may not be so. I'm told that most people's retirement pension funds are being raided, and funds are diminished. So that when you think about what we are trying to rely on, the kinds of things that we are anchored in, that our security, our sense of security is based on the fact that we will have a paycheck coming. We will have a Social Security check. We will have a pension check. There will be some money coming at a given time in a given amount on into the, quote, future, which is a very risky perspective to have, because the future, as there's a book called The Future, is a dangerous place to live, mainly because it does not exist.
Yeah.
So all of these things that we now see as privileges, that we have the welfare system and the Social Security and the link card and this and that and the other, these things are not reliable because they are transient and they're subject to the whims of private interests, political interests, and all kinds of other interests that are invisible to our eyes.
Yes, that is correct, Grandmaji. But if we had listened to our instructors when we were in school, this is nothing new. You know, this is nothing new. History repeats itself. If we have not learned from it, it tends to repeat itself. Empires are born, empires die. You have individuals who have control over the resources, and the people go about their business, you see, unaware. And that's the greatest thing that they've done. When I say they, so those who are in power. And those who are in power are not necessarily those whom we see. They usually operate behind the curtains, behind the scenes. And those who we see are just the front people for them. And you may call them senators, congressmen, preachers, ministers, presidents, you see. They are not truly the ones who are running the system. The system is controlled by those powers that are behind the scenes, and you very rarely even know their names, you see. But we have to seek to educate ourselves. But we are comforted every Sunday by football, baseball, basketball, all of these things
And televangelists.
they're televangelists. This is what they say, the dumbing down of the people, to have them satiated with entertainment. What did they do in Rome so that people wouldn't question the powers that be? They gave them the games, you see. And a circus, what they call a circus, which is a circular piece of bread, you see, and satisfied their appetite, gave them fun games and their Nintendo at the time, and the people were satisfied. And what happened? Rome fell. It's nothing new. This is history. It just takes on different forms at different times due to technology and all of that. But there are a group of individuals who control the wealth. They say 1% of the population controls 95% of all the wealth. You see, I mean, does that roll off your back like a duck? Like water rolls off a duck, or does that make you say, what? Is this true? Should I investigate this? You see? But most of the cases, we are kept with our nose to the grindstone. And with our noses to the grindstone every day, we don't have opportunity to investigate these matters, because a conscious public is dangerous. An educated public is dangerous because they will not. They will demand representation. They will demand that they be a truly democratic society. The democracy that we talk about today, this is not democracy. This is all special interests, you see. All special interests. Those who have the money control the politics, you see. And so people have to become aware and conscious. But you can't do it on your own. You're just one individual. I always liken it to us being on a ship called the Titanic. We all can see the iceberg up there. It's an iceberg. And you go to the captain and say, Captain, I think you should change course. There's an iceberg up there. And the captain looks at it and says, sit down. What do you know? You don't know anything. I'm a captain. I've been a captain. And he goes into a historical analysis of his experience, you see. And what happens? Runs into the iceberg. And the ship sinks. The Titanic sinks, you see. So we all sinking together, you see. Because those who are in control don't want to listen, you see. They won't listen. They believe that they know what's right, you see. And so we all sink together. I had a gentleman ask me the other day, we gave this analysis, he said, what do we do? I said, you have to brace yourself. Try to be close to a lifeboat if you can, because the ship is in the verge of being struck by an iceberg, you see. And this is why we can't put too much emphasis to this life that we have here, that everything is guaranteed. We feel that we're guaranteed a job. You're not guaranteed a job. You don't have, we say, well, we have a right. You don't have a right to a job. People give you jobs. Those who are in power give it to you, you see. If you had a right to a job, you create your own job, you see. But no, we are dependent. We're dependent on those who have the imagination, those who have the resources, you see. Oh, sure, there are certain constrictions that we can place upon them, but we won't do that, because when they give us these jobs, they make sure that we don't have time to think about nothing else but these jobs and the security of our families and our children and so forth and so on. If you would look at the economics of this country, respected to the whole world, everything is calibrated. It's calibrated. The price of milk is calibrated to your earning capacity, you see. The price of oil is calibrated to the car, how many miles per gallon that it gets, and the price of the car, and the insurance, and all of these other factors. So it keeps us always in a bind. We're always in a bind because it's calibrated down to the penny that we don't have freedom that we so guaranteed in our Constitution, you see. We don't have it. We have the illusion of freedom.
It's important that you do paint this picture, this Titanic. This is extremely important, not because you want to, pronounce doom and gloom. What you really want to do is to have people become aware of the situation that we face, that we have a captain at the helm who is ignoring greenhouse gases, who is ignoring global warming, who is ignoring the needs of the people, who is saying that things are there that are not there, who is saying that things are not there that are. This is the situation that we're in. And it's good to know what your situation is, because only when you are fully aware of what your situation is can you act in an intelligent manner. And the very best thing about it is this lifeboat. The lifeboat that we have that is not beside the ship, but the lifeboat that we have that is within us.
Yes.
We came with a built-in lifeboat, and we need to access that lifeboat, which is where spirituality comes in.
Yes, that is correct. We have to access that lifeboat that is within us, because inevitably the ship is going to sink anyway. What is death? Otherwise, the abandoning of this ship, of this body, of this world. Of course, we want to take everybody with us, all our loved ones, and all the things that we like and the things that we love. But you can't do it. You cannot do it. You can only, if possible, through the grace, save yourself.
But somehow I see that differently. I see that in the sense that this sense that we have that there is some reality outside of the oneness that is what is truly the state, the unity, means that you will take with you everything, because everything also is within you. You will not have to leave anything behind, because there's no behind to leave it to. In the same way that there is no future to take it to, there's no past to leave it with. But in order to contemplate such ideas, you have to extricate yourself from the kind of education that will make your whole spiritual experience external to yourself, that you are always looking outside of yourself for your Savior, for that which you will worship, for that on which you will rely. If everything upon which you rely is outside of yourself, you can do nothing about your condition. But if the most important thing, the most reliable thing is within you, then you've got it made. But you have to come into awareness of that, and you have to come into awareness of that by seeking it.
That's correct, Udamanji. That is correct. This point of which I'm speaking about, where is that you can only save yourself, basically deal with that everything else outside of yourself is all ego. Mm-hmm. It is the ego self. And our tendency through the ego is we want to bring this with us. Mm-hmm. But we have to, as great saints and mystics have said through time, we have to die while living. We have to learn to die while we're alive, while we're living. What is death? Death is nothing but ridding ourselves of those things in which we are accustomed to, you see, through the ego. This ego must die. This self, this false self of us, whom we think is our real self, this must be destroyed. This must die, you see. And this ego has encompassed everything in this world. This whole world is made up of the ego. My car, my family, my kids, my dog, my cat, my hat, my shoes,
My possessions.
my possessions, my ideas, you see, my thoughts, you see, all of this. This is all egocentric, you see. But in order to get on the lifeboat doesn't have room for all of it. Yeah, in the lifeboat doesn't have room for all of this. You have to abandon all of this. It's just like jumping on the Titanic. If the Titanic is sinking and you have an opportunity to get in the lifeboat, are you going to get your luggage? You're going to get in your TV? You want to get your friend down the hallway to get? You're going to run back and try to get him? And by that time, you don't have time for that. You only have time to get in the boat if you have the opportunity yourself. If you have that opportunity, then you have to take it. Now, after that, if you want to reconstruct all of this, knowing who your true self is, you didn't do it. But let me tell you this, they cannot accompany you. You see?
But my point is that there is actually no they. It is the ego that has created the they.
Yes, there's...
The external world is the manifestation of the ego, yes, not of the divine.
Yes, we have to realize that. When you have that realization, yes, you'll see. And then from that point on, once you have the realization, if you want to create it again, do it again.
But
awareness.
But someone needs to point in that direction if you are not already looking there yourself. In other words, what I'm saying is that we have leaders, so-called religious leaders, who are pointing us in the wrong direction because they are pointing us away from ourselves.
True.
Away from the lifeboat, mm-hmm, that resides within. We're looking, which is why I think we tend to rely on all other external things, because that which we worship is not a part of us, is not within, even though the Holy Book says the kingdom of God is within. Even though they have the Holy Book that says that, they still tend to lead us away from ourselves, to look toward external phenomena for our salvation, yeah, which is probably the highest form of vulnerability that we can experience, is to be looking for something where it is not, yes, and expecting something that is not there to be there to catch you when you fall.
Yes, yes.
To ignore what is here within and pursue something other than what is truly can be truly relied upon to be the salvation, mm-hmm, of ourselves. So this is a problem that I see for our people, that we rely on jobs. When you said jobs are given to us, well, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Yes. So no one gives you a job unless there is more profit in the job you perform than you will be paid for performing it. Mm-hmm. Because obviously I would not want to pay you to do something for me that would have no benefit to me, and not only benefit, but a greater benefit to me than it would be to you. Mm-hmm. So people talk about a good job. That's an oxymoron. There's no such thing as a good job. Working for someone else is never a good thing. It is always a better thing to be resourceful and to be able to do what Carter G. Woodson said, to be able to make a living. Getting a job is what our children are taught to do in schools, but they need to be taught to make a living, to do what we have been able to do for centuries, which is to make a way out of no way, to create an income, to create a source of wealth for ourselves. But we cannot do that if we are being educated so we can get a good job, so we can work for somebody else and enrich somebody else and expect somebody else to set aside some funds so that we will have a pension, so we will have Social Security, so we will have the things to fall back on, so we will have some security in, you know, in those times when we are unable to rely on these good jobs that we have. If you watch the newspaper on a daily basis, you see that there are going to be thousands of people who are going to be discharged from this company or from another company. Right now in the city, they're talking about the CTA workers are talking about job action, and they're saying it's illegal and they can't do it. And so they have to either suffer the working conditions under which they currently work, or they have to risk being, you know, discharged permanently, perhaps fined, perhaps imprisoned. There's no telling how many penalties can be heaped upon them because they're trying to get some justice. So that the situation is such that we can expend a lot of energy trying to get justice in a democracy that is an illusion.
Yes, yes. Things have changed drastically, you know. I mean, at one time, you know, at the turn of the so-called 20th century, you know, it's when the labor movements and all of those took place, you see. A man was, you know, for his labor, he was paid X amount of dollars according to his labors, you know. The more work you put in, the more labor you did, the more you were paid. There's a discorrelation between that and today. It has nothing to do with your labor, because with the advent of the computer and technology and robots and all of this, it seems the opposite, you see. Most people want to be investment bankers and lawyers and professionals. They make nothing. These people absolutely create nor make anything. But they make the most money. So what has it got to do with the laborers, you see? And with the, like I said, high tech today, computers and robotics, and they're advancing even further. I mean, if you go to Detroit, or you go to the car manufacturing, what labor that individuals used to do, part of the union and all of that, and was paid appropriately for it, the robots are doing that work. You can work a robot 24 hours a day. He doesn't complain.
He doesn't take a break.
He doesn't take a break.
Doesn't go to lunch.
Doesn't go to lunch.
Doesn't call in sick.
No pension, you see. Doesn't need it. So the skills in which we had and could barter with as far as our labor is concerned, it's no longer needed. It's on the program now. It's on a little disc in digits. And they put that program in, and it gives all the combination of human experience for thousands of years fed to this robot. So what do they need of you? Well, we live in a society. These goods that are produced, someone has to buy them to keep this thing going, whatever it is. But if you don't have any money to pay for them, how can they sell it? Well, it's a bigger world out here now, you see. Before, we were national boundaries. We had national boundaries. You had the United States, you had Canada, Mexico, Guatemala. You had all of these. But the world has become small due to technology. The world is smaller. I remember at one time, Guru Maji, and probably you too, that if you could travel from state to state in the United States, people did things differently. You go to Mississippi and people were talking at almost a different dialect of English. And they had their own customs. And we take it a little back further, states was almost like different little nations. But if you travel throughout the United States, they all got McDonald's, they all speak alike mostly. Everything is just...
They all have cell phones.
They all got cell phones. It's just one place, you know, one standard place. Basically, the laws are basically the same. You can eat at Chili's, whatever you eat, wherever. and they're doing it all the same. Now this is the same thing that's happening internationally, you see. There are no national boundaries. They're being obscured. But the people in various countries are behind the times. They still believe that they are truly citizens of a particular nation that has national sovereignty and all of these things. No, these things are being discarded.
These things have been discarded because the 1% of the population, the world population that you referred to, that controls the majority of the wealth in the world, these people are not all in the same place. They are all over the planet. And if there is a nation, that is the nation. That is the nation of the wealthy, the nation of the haves is the true nation. They are in control of all of the raw materials and the resources on the planet. In the 90s, when the Parliament of the World Religions had a gathering, a huge gathering at the Palmer House over several days, they pondered what was the greatest issue facing the planet. And they concluded that the greatest issue facing the planet was overpopulation. They said overpopulation was responsible for the pollution that was being experienced on the planet, that there was not enough resources to go around, and that something had to be done to resolve this problem of overpopulation. Now, the overpopulation had been presented as a political problem. But now you had the churches, the religions, the world religions who were joining in and who were joining hands with the state to come to the same conclusion. In fact, the Dalai Lama himself said that he believed, and this is a direct quote, "I believe that human life, that every human life is precious, but precious life too many now." So even the Dalai Lama agreed that overpopulation was the problem. Now, I didn't think that they had the Parliament of the World Religions and had all of the churches with only a minor representation of the black churches who seemed to be there mostly to provide the entertainment. But most of the workshops that I went to where they were dealing with this problem, all were working with this one issue. It seems to me that they went back to their respective places and they continued to work on this issue, the issue of overpopulation, because it seems to me that with the state of the world the state that the world is in now, with the kind of ma'afa that we witnessed in New Orleans around the so-called Hurricane Katrina, which I like Spike Lee's read on that better, when the levees broke, and there's even an improvement that could be made on that. But certainly the whole idea that Hurricane Katrina caused the loss of all of those lives and all of that property is ludicrous when you look at how people were neglected and abandoned and allowed to perish while the nation stood, while the leaders of the nation stood idly by and lifted scarcely a finger. This was, to me, population control. When people get into trouble, when people cannot rely upon their government, when they need resources that only a government can provide, not a community, but a government can provide. When they are denied those resources, that is, to me, a process or a means of population control. And so overpopulation is still apparently on the agenda, but it's no longer being discussed. And so we have this situation where we are, as you say, being entertained. There are the games we have games for all ages. We have the children's games and the teenagers' games and the adults and the seniors. Everybody has some pastime or some diversion that they can engage, so that they do not have to deal with the reality that we face, and so that they do not have to go to the lifeboat.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is the nature of human life on the planet. It's nothing new, it's always been there. And we have to realize that you have to become dependent upon yourself. You can't depend on government, because government is an illusion too, you see. They give you it's an illusion of control that they have, that they don't have in all actuality. Because like you said in Katrina, it wasn't because, I don't think that because that everything was there to be done, you know, the houses and the resources weren't there to help the people. It was caught in a bureaucratic chokehold, you see. Government is full of bureaucracy. You can't move this pencil unless you have 10 people sign off on it. And if one of those persons refuse to sign off on it, you can't pick the pencil up, you see. That's how government operates, bureaucracy. And so through this bureaucracy, there becomes, what do you call stagnation.
I call it obstruction.
Yes, it's obstruction. It can't do it. When you have other organizations that were able to go and do things that government couldn't do.
But perhaps it's true that they can't do it, but also it is equally true that they don't choose to do it.
These are certain dynamics that are involved into this system of what you call bureaucracy, government, corporations, politics, all of these things. It's very extensive, you see. And you're dealing with what you call special interests, you see. That's special interest. It may not be in the interest of someone else or some other company that this company gets this contract.
They're tearing down the public housing in New Orleans as we speak.
Yeah.
The people are protesting because there is public housing that can be rehabilitated and people can be given places to live. But they're tearing it down, and it doesn't make any sense. And we refuse to sign off on the control of the greenhouse gases, the emission of the greenhouse gases, and it doesn't make any sense. And we are at war, and it doesn't make any sense. And we are trying to go to war with another country, and it doesn't make any sense. And nothing makes any sense. It is irrational. It doesn't make any sense. Okay. But yet we keep trying to, elect. We try to elect candidates for office to go and represent us. And if this party gets in, there's going to be a great change in our condition because this party is going to go in and correct the sins of the party that was there before them. And when do we wake up? Mm-hmm. When do we recognize?
This is the same old game, Guru Maharaj, that has been played for centuries. You see, we got rid of the monarchs and we got the emperors. You see, we got rid of the emperors and we got dictators. You see, it's the same game that has been played all the time, and people have their individual special interests. There's greed, there's lust, there's ego. All of these factors are being played out on the open stage there. You know, as you was in Ghana, you saw that people were very resourceful, but there were problems with distribution. You know, people in the back country weren't able to get the products that were maybe in the city because of distribution. There's not a shortage of resources in the world, as they may have said at the parliamentary conference. There's not a shortage. It's distribution.
Obviously, it's not a shortage. But if somebody wants to define the problem as a problem of too many people in the world, and also designate which people among the too many people in the world are the people to be excused.
Yes.
You know, then this is actually it's a declaration of war against the people who are not valued, the people about whom for whom there is no further use. In other words, the laborers, which was primarily what we were to this place in the days of chattel slavery. There is no need to have physical labor because now you have the technology that can produce the commodities that people will consume.
Yeah.
And you have markets not only here, but you have markets throughout the rest of the world, unwilling markets perhaps. Some of these places don't want these goods that we are dumping on them, but nonetheless, we find outlets for the goods that we produce, and consequently, we have people who are idle, who have nothing to do and no expectation of having anything to do, and have no income, no, quote, legitimate income. So we have that situation, but at the same time, we're producing commodities a mile a minute. You go in stores, and it's disgraceful how much there is in stores and how few people there are who can actually afford what is in the stores. We not only have what we produce, but we also have what is produced in third world countries. We have third world is a vulgar term, but this is to the countries that these are countries that include people of color that are referred to as third world countries. So we have goods that we import, goods that we produce, and our warehouses are flooded with material goods. And yet we have a situation where we have few people who can afford to consume these goods, and it's just a mockery. It's just a circus, which is the best name you could give it.
Well, Guru Maji, what's the problem? And the situation is, and we have to expand our awareness. You see, when we talk about our rights, American rights, most people think they're talking about us.
Oh, come on.
You see? No. As an American, you are not considered. If you would look at the picture, and you're being disconsidered. Even people who are members of the majority in this country, they are beginning to find out that they are expendable. You see? Those individuals who are in power are showing these people who are members of the majority in this country that they're just as expendable as the monarchs and aristocracy in Europe made the peasants who were of European descent expendable. This is a hard pill to swallow. We can see them doing it to these people, you see, because it's always been like that. Why? No. They wouldn't do this to me. Yes, they would do it to you.
But you can't see that they're doing it to you because you have scapegoats. You have minorities, you have felons, you have black people, you have women, you have all kinds of people that you are superior to, that you can take out your hostilities on, that you can compare yourself to and find yourself in a more privileged position. So you will never see that you are part of the oppressed, because you will always regard yourself as being above the oppressed if you have some regular income, if you have a condominium, if you have a luxury automobile, if you have a big screen television, if you have a timeshare, you know, these kind of toys and trinkets that enable people to think that they have something. But something struck me when I heard them say that the approval rating for the president had dropped down lower than ever in history before. And they talked about the number of people who disapproved of what the president was doing. But then you have to realize something when you look at that. If 60% or more people disapprove of what the president is doing, and he is still able to do it with impunity, then that means that the 40% who approve are in fact the majority.
That's correct.
Because he is pleasing, there is somebody that he is pleasing that is happy with the job that he is doing and is rewarding him for it and is assuring that he will be able to continue to do it. So we've got a kind of upside down democracy in the sense that
It always has been that way.
well, I just think it's kind of, that's kind of a clear example that it doesn't matter if the majority disapproves of what the chief executive officer is doing, if the people who really count are those who maintain this president in office.
Yes, but the whole point is that there's always been the 1 or the 2% who's controlled the 98%. It's always been like that. It's just that we have given the illusion that my vote counts. It's given the illusion that it's okay, I will never be in this situation. You see, because I've aligned myself with these interests, these special interests. You see, that lasts up to a point, but the people below was above the 40% were like that too. But the waves, the tide is rising. You see, the tide starts at your feet, then it rises up to your knees. Next thing is at your stomach, and next thing is up to your throat. And you become part of those disenfranchised because you've supported the disenfranchisement of the others. We're all in this together. We in this country, we use 85% of all the natural resources than the rest of the world. But we say, well, what do we mean? The people over in Africa, the people in other parts of the country, you know, these people, look at them, they're poor, they're lazy. They don't want to do no work. They're ignorant. They don't want to get educated. What's wrong with these people? You see? And while we drive our Mercedes and live in our $700,000 homes, we are just as part of this conspiracy as everybody else.
Absolutely.
We're lending ourselves to that, you see, because we want to protect our comforts, you see. Now the world is becoming more smaller. Your labor that was worth $20 an hour, you can give to somebody in Southeast Asia, China for $2 an hour.
Or $2 a day.
Or $2 a day, you see? So what does that say? Well, we want to protect ourselves. Well, the capitalists don't care about you protecting yourself. They don't want you. They're not going to allow you to protect yourselves, you see? Because they're capitalists. And they have to show a profit, as much profit as they possibly can, you see, at any cost as they possibly can, you see. So what does that mean? That means you and me are expendable. We are expendable. We fight the wars. You say, what are we fighting about? We're fighting for democracy. What is democracy? We don't have it.
We're fighting because we're about to be attacked.
These are all smoke screens. Wars have always been about power and money, basically. Now, as they go along, they always throw something else in there. You know, let's free these other people over here. You know, it's not going to cost anything additional. So to get that benefit. But don't be disillusioned about what these wars are fought about. But we've been born and bred to believe and the so-called dignity of human being, which exists, but those who are in power, they've abandoned that long ago.
You know, you arrested my attention when you spoke about disenfranchised, because I had to remember that the Voting Rights Act that gave black people in America the right to vote expires this year. And I don't hear any conversation about any new Voting Rights Act or any extension of the Voting Rights Act, which causes me to wonder whether or not black people will be disenfranchised by default, simply because the legislation that gave them the right to vote will just simply expire and no longer be applicable. And in the context of a black candidate running for president, one has to wonder what impact it will have, if any, since we have been effectively disenfranchised by being excluded from the voting booths and having our votes not counted and tossed out, and, you know, false charges made against us and so forth and so on, since we've been impaired as voters, as have the rest of the voting population. One just wonders about this whole idea of, you know, being able to elect representatives, to have representation along with the taxation, you know, to have some of these old slogans, you know, be realized in the context of, you know, freeing the rest of the world, making the rest of the world safe for democracy. We just wonder how safe is democracy here for the people of color who are here.
Well, Gurumaji, you know, we have to be able to see this thing for what it really is. You have to take our colored glasses off and see it for what it is. I mean, if you're fortunate enough to have a job, have your job. If you're fortunate enough to have a house, if it's $700,000, whatever it is, enjoy it for what it is. But don't think for 1 minute that it's yours, that you can take it to the, you know, that it's yours, it belongs to you, and you're secure. There is no security. You see, the majority of people in this country are owned by the banks. You're finding that out. You have a mortgage. You have a small interest in that house. The majority of the interest belongs to the mortgage company, to the banks, you see.
You have an automobile with a car note.
Yes, yes.
The automobile title is with the lender.
Yes. This is the reality. Accept that reality. Buy yourself some time. Time for what? Time to go within yourself so that you can eventually find that reality that shows you the nature of this whole creation and ascend to that level of your own awareness and consciousness where there's only the true security that exists. You see? Everything else is transcendent. And even if we are able to tread water to the end of our life, we're treading water, eventually we're going to sink anyway, because death spares no one. But at least do something for ourselves before then, so that if death comes, when it comes, not if, but when it comes, we can welcome it. Because why? We've died already. We've died before, we died while living.
I want to be found sitting in my lifeboat.
That's a good place to be, in your lifeboat. The lifeboat within. Because this will continue. It will continue on and on and on. This is the nature of the illusion. It is the nature of this great play that has been played out before us here. I notice what we're talking about, Guru Maji, here, sounds just as foreign as pig Latin, you see. Because, like you said earlier, most people are projected outside. Outside, this ego self is outside. And those individuals who are in religious organizations, they lead the people outside, you see. They get them attached to things outside. A lot of your churches now, they don't even talk about even the infantile aspects of spirituality or God, they talk about how you can make more money.
Prosperity.
Prosperity. Demanding that God give you what you got coming. Demanding that God give you that, demanding. Pray for that, brother, sister, my brother. Pray for these material things which is exploiting the rest of the world. Cheap labor in China, cheap labor in Indonesia, cheap labor. So pray for these things. You see? That's a waste. It's a waste of prayer. Praying for rocks. What you got coming, you're going to get it anyway. But if you have any additional time, take that time in which this high-tech society has given us. The boss has given us a job, or whoever he is, that we can have the weekends off. Spend that time developing our own awareness within. This is where we should spend the time. That's the best use of our time. Football games, okay, if you got to do football, limit it. Take some time for yourself and self-development. Go within yourself. You might not like what you see inside. It may be quite dark. But that's the whole aspect. Because our attention has been focused outside since we were born. To go inside, it's going to be dark there. Because we haven't put any attention in it. But once we start putting attention inside ourselves, with the right methodology, when I say right methodology, we don't know how to go in. One thing about it, we have no idea how to go within. You see? But if we are lucky that someone even speak about going within ourselves, and we get a methodology for doing so, of how to go within, we're very fortunate.
Well, I just don't want to interrupt you, but I have to because they keep flashing little signs.
Oh.
I thank you so much, Baba Prince. I hope that our conversation has been helpful to someone. It certainly has been for me.